Devil in a black cloak, street gospel, light of the temple. Sword swing, killer live from the ghetto. The hood messenger, let them know hell's close. Black burial, the devil in a black cloak.
Yo, what is up? Welcome to the Street Gospel Podcast. I'm your host, Dave One. And this is episode number... What episode number is this, Cam? 37. Oh, Cam's here, everybody. So for the last two episodes, Cam wasn't here, man. I was struggling a little bit. You know, it's kind of hard when my engineer's not here. I just want to talk on the mic. That's all I want to do. I don't want to set up stuff. I don't want to set up the cameras. I don't want to make sure the SD cards are formatted or anything like that. All I want to do is talk to my guests. So it's good to have Cam back. Thank you, Cam, for coming back. I'm going to let you stay in the house another week, but if you miss again, it's over. So, making sure. But we got a great guest today. But before we get to our guest, this episode is sponsored by Hope and Promises. So Hope and Promises is a nonprofit humanitarian outreach organization. If you remember one of our episodes, we had attorney Arturo Pena. Art Pena, that's my brother-in-law. He started this new nonprofit humanitarian outreach program, and basically they are giving basic needs, food, medical help, clothing to people, and they're really doing a great job out there. So if you want to check them out, if you want to support them, check out www.hopeandpromises.com. I mean, they've done excellent work, especially during the pandemic. A lot of people have been hurting. They've been able to feed families. They've been able to give medical care. And this is not just here in the States, but it's international also. So they're branching out. So very proud of Art Pena and all they're doing in that organization. So check them out, Hope and Promises. But today we got an excellent guest. I've been trying to get this guest for a little while. I had to cancel on her. On accident is my bad day. It just didn't work out. And I was like, I'm going to have to cancel. So, but I got to play a little bit of music to introduce my guest. So I got a little music to introduce my guest. So she grew up, I would say more South LA, right? Yeah. Some people call it South Central LA. It's not really South Central LA. People from South LA say, I'm from South LA. It's a little bit different. It's south of South Central. But it's a whole different area, whole different neighborhood. She is a mother. She's a grandmother. She's a wife, a new wife, right?
5 years.
Yeah, 5 years. Okay, we'll talk about that. I'm thinking that time's just flying by here. She is a director of a legal department. See, I'm falling off here. I'm already falling off here. I know she's in the legal realm, but she's a good friend. She's my wife's homegirl. They grew up together. I'm very happy to have her on the Street Gospel Podcast. Wait a minute. Your last name is not the same anymore, right?
Ruiz, R-U-I-Z.
Oh, it is? Oh, it's okay. I just want to make sure. Give it up for Miss Gabby Ruiz. Yo.
What's up, Dave?
How's it going?
It's going.
Really? Good?
Yeah, excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, so am I.
I mean, look, we always see each other. I mean, on the gram, we see each other on Facebook. You're connected with my wife. You guys are like homegirls, go way back. Always been connected. We've been friends for years. Know your family, your dad. R.I.P. to your dad. Good man. Your mother, your sisters, your just whole family. Your nephews, right? Mm-hmm. I know those guys pretty good. But I wanted to have you on the podcast just so. There's a lot to talk about. And I always felt like, Melissa was a big advocate to get you on. She's like, I was like, I need some women with some stories. And she was like, get Sylvia. So you and Sylvia are homegirls too. You guys know each other. And then she was like, you got to get Gabby on the podcast. And I was like, yeah, I got to do it. So finally get you here.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And I mean, so how's everything going?
It's great. It's great.
You look great, by the way.
Thank you.
Look really great, by the way. I mean, man. I mean, you look. I mean, fabulous. I mean, I was like, whoa, because we haven't seen each other. It's been a
while.
It's been a few months, other than on Instagram. So, thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thank you.
So, let's go to the beginning of your story. I mean, and it's kind of like our story of kids that we kind of grew up with, right, in church and stuff. And I met you and your family in church. We grew up together. We were friends. And then through our teenage years, and then I think kind of everybody started going a little bit kind of their separate ways, right?
Yeah. During our teenage years, we were the first generation of teenagers in the church.
Right.
So it was crazy. We baptized Praise Chapel, just put it that way.
I mean, it was wow, those days were interesting, man. Because for those of you that have seen my wife, she was, Melissa was on the show, and even Sylvia. I mean, you guys grew up into beautiful women, and your grandmother, Sylvia's a grandmother, but it's funny when we look back at those days because you guys were wild, man.
We were wild. We were rebellious.
Right?
Yeah, there was nobody was going to tell us what to do.
Yeah.
Nobody.
You guys were pretty crazy. But I remember and I was pretty straight.
Yeah.
Straight edge. I mean, I wasn't a wild kid. I mean, I grew up in the same neighborhood and things like that, and was around the same people. But I was kind of I was pretty straight edge. But I always we were always friends. I wouldn't say I was always friends with Melissa. I really didn't like her when we were younger. But we were friends, and I always was friends with your family. They always were really nice to me. I remember going over their house, and I think I went there a few times for Bible study, you guys' house and stuff. And but during the teenage years, I remember a lot of the kids that we grew up with, it was kind of like everybody started branching out. Some girls got pregnant. So some of the guys kind of just left and kind of just started falling away, kind of partying a little bit and doing different things. And I remember you got hooked up with a guy from the neighborhood and stuff, and then we all knew him. He was a big clown, joker type of guy.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. He used to make me laugh, but he was living in the neighborhood too. You know what I mean? And what happened? Why do you think so many kids just went their way? I asked this question because I've had some kids that grew up in church on the podcast, and they say that their life was just a routine of church. It wasn't like an encounter. It wasn't like they were just going to church because their family went to church, and when they were able to decide, I don't want to go no more, they were like, we're out.
Yeah, well, I think there was a mixture of kids. Some kids went on their own, like my daughter's dad.
Right.
And then a couple other people were there on their own. But for some of our families, they were the first time that they were introduced to church. So, from my opinion, they became very extreme. And so there was no trying to attempt to communicate with your kids at that point. It was, this is the way it was. And we're growing in an era where we're trying to explore and experiment and stuff, and so it was a clash. And then our church was in the core of another neighborhood, and so there was always activity going on.
Yeah, I remember guys coming to the church to fight, and I mean, we were wild, fighting in the alley behind the church, and who's fighting today? Oh, they're going to the corner to fight, and it was just I think what you said there was a lot of the parents were first generation Christians, are their life changed, and the background they came from was just broken homes. Just they didn't know how to be parents.
No.
And so they weren't quite sure, and they just thought, well, if we're just taking them to church, that's all, that they'll be fine. And I think for a lot of the kids, that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
They needed more than just church, they needed something at home too.
Yeah, definitely there was a disconnect there. My parents were going to church, but there was a lot of chaos going on at home. So my way of rebelling and acting out was one of the outlets. Like, I'm gonna get you kicked out of church.
Really?
I'm gonna. Oh yeah. I know Pastor Phil Hernandez threatened our parents, like, these kids don't straighten up, you're gonna be out. We're like, yeah. Writing on church pews and restrooms and graffiti, and we're out of control.
Yeah, I remember the first time somebody wrote in the restroom, and I forget whose name was it. And I don't think anybody really figured out who it was, but I think some kids were testing the water and they wrote in the church restroom. Yeah. And it was like what's going on? It was just like, and I think a lot of it was they didn't know how to handle that, and which was weird to me sometimes, because everybody in the church came from the neighborhood, or came from, and so I didn't understand why they didn't know how to deal with the same type of kids when we started rebelling a little bit. I mean, some more than others, of course, but I remember like somebody telling me, which I wasn't a bad kid. I did like graffiti. I did, I was like any other kid. I was like, go outside during service, whatever. But I remember like people being so hard, and I'd be like I'm not really a bad kid, man. I'm just a kid. Yeah. I'm just a youth, right? Yeah. And so I think it was weird to me that they didn't know how to really react to that, and coming from where they came from. Yeah,
it was extreme.
A little bit.
There were some people though that still to this day mean a lot to me, that did try to connect, did invest their time and their love and their prayers. I know Mona Reese she's still a big part of my life.
Yeah.
Your Aunt Apples,
yeah.
Eva, those people didn't speak down to me. So if you spoke down to me, it just gave me a reason to challenge.
Right.
And at that time I'm trying to find myself. I'm a young, rebellious, angry young girl.
Yeah.
So, and there was a bunch of us like that.
Yeah, it was a crazy mix, man. Yeah. It was a really crazy mix of kids. I mean, I would say one thing, we kind of all stuck together, and we were all still friends, and even when we went our separate ways, we all had, I mean, if we all got together this day, it would just be all love.
Yeah, we did a couple years ago, I think, at Carlos and Eva's house, and we had a ball. We hadn't seen each other in so many years, and it was just like nothing, and we had such a good time. I'm gonna do
that here. Yeah, we're gonna do that one of these days, and we'll get everybody here and do a little reunion. But what do you think made you angry and made you rebel? What if you look back on young Gabby, 14, 15 years old? What do you think made you rebel? I mean, everybody has a reason, kind of.
Yeah. So for me, it stemmed from obviously my home life, and it happened way before my teenage years. I think early on, my mom and dad had a very difficult relationship, a marriage. My dad, he was first in his life, and everybody knew it. He was a great provider, but as a husband, it didn't. From my point of view, it didn't look good from a daughter's point of view.
And it was probably, I mean, I want to say 5 sisters altogether and 1 brother.
There's 6 of us girls and 2 boys.
So there's
8 of us. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, there's 8 of us.
Living in what?
A 1-bedroom house.
A 1-bedroom house, yep. Right?
And a 1-bedroom house. And you couldn't tell us when we were kids that we were, poor or anything like that, because we didn't feel it.
No.
There was stacks of bunk beds in the room, and a couple of us slept in the living room. My parents slept on the other side of the living room, and we made it work.
Yeah.
It didn't feel anything less.
In the old school days, that was like normal. Like,
it was.
Melissa talks about her grandparents, and they didn't have no door on their bedroom, and it was a 2-bedroom. The house is tiny. When you're a kid, everything looks big, right? You go to your old street, and you're like, how did we play baseball on this street in the middle of the street? Like it makes no sense. But in those days, you don't know. You got food, you got a house, you got clothes. You're like, everybody else, and everybody else is the same too in the neighborhood. The same. Yep. Which is crazy, right?
Yep.
But
So I'm the 7th of the 8th kids.
Yeah.
8 kids. I'm number 7. So by the time it got to 7 and 8,
I say the same thing. I say the same thing about. I mean, we know there's only 4 of us.
Yeah.
I have 3 sisters after me. I always tell my mom, like y'all were so strict on me. By the time you got to Nisi, like, she was like, oh yeah,
we're done.
We done gave up. By the time Nisi came around, we were done. And I was like, wow, like, you know. But yeah, it's true. Once you get to that point, you're just kind of like, it's cool.
Yeah, for me, it was more that my dad had checked out by then. By the time it got to raising us, and you know, my mom was busy chasing my dad, so there was very little interaction at that point. You know, and so early on in my life, my brother was there for me and my oldest sister, but things happened in their life and they had to leave, and that was my first experience of abandonment. Because my mom, as much as I love her, and we've had this conversation many times, she was too involved with my dad. You know, she was chasing him and making sure, you know, where he was at, who he was with, you know, doing whatever, and you know, mentally she was struggling.
Wow.
And so I got to see that, you know, and you know, I have clear memories of my mom just losing it early in my life, and that stemmed a lot of stuff that happened in me much later in life. But that's where it started.
Did that affect you with your relationships going forward? See,
that's the seed.
Yeah, because I think you go one way or the other, right? You end up being exactly like that, or totally like, I'm not going to be like that.
And for me, it was both. You know.
I think your headphones on inside out. Turn that.
This one.
Cam, turn that the other way. Flip it down. I'm sorry, I just barely noticed that right now.
Here, say cut real quick.
Cut.
There we go. There we go.
My
Okay.
bad, Gabby.
I was like,
I barely saw it right now. I was like, wait, something's wrong right there. hopefully it doesn't. What about what? To move closer?
no, about.
You did? I didn't even see that.
phone.
I didn't even see that. My bad. All right, sorry. Ready?
Clap one more time.
All right.
Yeah. So, you know, I struggled with both. You know, early on, I think I was probably in the 1st grade. My mom had taken off to Mexico. She had taken my youngest sister and one older than me and left me behind. I was at school, so I wasn't off track, and left me with my dad. And my dad took me to my mom's friend's house. And I was there during the duration of my mom's trip to Mexico. And I clearly remember being at the breakfast table and turning around and seeing my dad with this woman.
How old are you?
I was probably in the 1st grade.
Wow.
And so imagine the weight of that, you know, of, okay, she's my mom's good friend. He's hurting my mom. I have to keep the secret. How can I hurt my mom? You know, and so I'm young, and that was really that, and the combination of seeing my mom go through what she was going through, not understanding until that time. Like, oh, this is why. And I was little, and I already knew the concept.
And you knew what was going on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you go totally opposite of that.
Yeah. Yeah. It warped my sense of love from that moment on.
What was it like?
I think I was in search of being loved. If that was love, like, I didn't understand what love was. And I think every human being, that's a natural need.
Did you think it was normal?
No.
You knew that it was wrong.
I knew it was wrong.
Oh.
I knew it was wrong. He's married to my mom.
Yeah.
And then you go home like nothing's wrong.
You would think that your dad would kind of hide it a little bit more?
I think to a degree my dad it is what it is.
Because your mom accepted it.
Because my mom accepted it.
She knew.
She knew. She knew.
So that really warps your mind to say, like, how are you letting him do this? It doesn't make sense to me.
Oh, yeah. I was angry. I was resentful that she stood there and took that. And I was angry at him for doing that.
So that's where the rebellion is. Is like, I can't respect you going to church and playing this role, and you're angry at your dad for doing that. You're angry at your mom for putting up with it. Yeah. I need to get out of here. I need to
get out.
How old were you when you decided that?
I hated being home. I remember one time when my mom decided to leave my dad. I was probably 9-10 years old. She left to La Puente with my aunt, and I was the happiest kid. I was like, finally, we get out. We're going to start a new life. I was excited to go to this school, and here comes my dad. And so I always had a desire to not be home. Like, I didn't want to be home. Home was not good for me.
Was it still crowded?
No, everybody was starting to move out.
Okay.
You know, we were starting to.
So now it's highlighted more because in the busyness of life, and when your house is, I tell people that all the time when they have kids, right, and their spouse and them maybe they don't get along, but the busyness of life's practice, school, work, cooking, put them to bed, do the homework, and then when it starts dying a little bit down, and it's just like the spouses, you got to really deal with life. You know what I mean? So by the time there's just you and your sister Christina left, it's probably like they're probably realizing like, oh, we have a lot more time together than we anticipated, right?
Yeah, so we grew up in pairs. And so me and my younger sister Christina, and then my sister Alma and Martha, she's 4 years older than me. So they were going through their crazy stages too. So there was my poor mom was like, could only cut herself in so many pieces, so being between schools, kids getting kicked out or fighting here or doing this. My mom was she was a stay-at-home mom. So she was running at every school. I remember there was a dean of Drew Junior High right there on Compton at our house every day, getting my sisters out of bed, dragging them to school. So this became normal for us, and I hated that. Like, I hated the chaos, I hated the anger, I hated the fighting, I hated being home. I hated it.
And where did you go?
I started hitting the streets, started running away, I got pregnant real young. I was 14.
Did you leave the house when you got pregnant?
I did. I probably about my 4th month, I ended up going to placement in Lincoln Heights. Anything to get out. My dad.
What was placement?
It was like a girls' home.
Okay.
Where one side was girls that had kids and one side was girls that were pregnant. My dad and I just bumped heads. Obviously, he wasn't happy that I was pregnant. I'm 14 years old by this dummy that's 4 years older than me. He's not, trying to be in the picture. And
were you? I asked this because, as a young girl, were you just like happy that you were going to have a baby and have something to love and have something to love you back unconditionally? Or were you just like, I messed up?
I was never one of those girls that said I dreamed of having kids. It happened. And the situation was what it was. I had somebody that wasn't interested in being a parent. And here I was with this kid in my stomach. What do? I got to figure this out. And abortion wasn't an option for me. I knew that from elementary. That it wasn't okay for me. So I had to figure it out. And that was the first moment where, like, all right, there's no time for crying. There's no time for none of this stuff.
But you're 14.
It just happened. It kicked in.
Wow.
It kicked in. And I knew being home wasn't good for me. So I ended up in placement. And, it started giving me a sense of independence. And then I felt my baby. Like, this was the first human being that was going to love me.
Yeah.
Unconditionally. And me love her. Like, that's it. We're connected for life, me and her. Like, she wasn't going to go away, and I'm not going away. Everybody else is removable in your life. But her, it was it.
It's yours.
She's mine.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, so 14, in placement, angry, depressed, sad. This guy, I think he ended up going to jail. We didn't last too long. I think she was less than a year old when we went our own way. But I stood close to his family, and he's somewhat still in her life. Everything happens for a reason. And for me, that was the beginning of, you know, my life, my story. You know, it made me grow up. I was 14 and I had to figure it out. Like, how my parents said, you're not getting on welfare and you're not staying home. So either you go to school or you work. Which one are you doing?
And who watched the baby?
So my mom didn't believe in watching the kids. She's like, figure it out. So I got on the yellow pages when I came home from placement. I came home when she was born. I got on the yellow pages and I looked for a high school that had daycare.
Wow.
And so I enrolled. It was all the way. I lived in Southeast LA, so Firestone and Alameda, that's me. The school was on Washington and Crenshaw. So it took me a metro and a bus to get there every day. You know, and then I would come home, drop her off at her dad's mom's house, and go to work. I used to work at Children's Hospital in Hollywood.
Wow.
Come home, do homework, do this again 5 days a week. So it was the beginning of like, I got to figure this out. I can't depend on him. My parents said that they can't help me. You know, they won't help me. I think, and they did me a big favor because that's how I got ahead in my life. Very limited times that they say, okay, come back in or let us help you. Or, you know, it was like, figure this out.
So you're, how long did that go on? That you went for school, work, and that little...
Probably 2 years. 2 years.
And you finished school?
Not there. I ended up moving up to Central California, but I left there when I met my kid's dad, my other two kids' dad. I was about 18 years old.
I thought you were older when you met.
No. I met him when I was 16.
How old was he?
He was 30.
Okay, so let me ask you that. Okay, well, we'll get to that. We'll get to it. But so I remember when you moved up there.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know the ins and outs. I still like both guys. I mean, at the time, but I don't know what kind of person they were personally. I mean, just from the surface, right? I didn't know. So you move up there, you finish up there, and you have
I had my two kids.
Two more kids by the age of. So now you got 3 kids by the age of 20.
Yeah.
But you're still going to school?
I was going to school up there. He was working, and I was going to school.
So you're still handling your business, though.
Yep. I always handle my business. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to school, finish, 3 kids.
Yep.
Things good up there?
They were good at the beginning.
Well, why did you guys move up there?
I was tired of LA. I knew that I needed change. I needed a slower pace. I knew that eventually I was going to creep back into doing things that I shouldn't do and start partying and doing things like that. And so I had a kid now. So I had to grow up and figure this out and try to give her a better life. And so I packed up our bags from one day to the next. My sister was living up there, and I asked her, can I come? Can he come too? He was on parole. Just got out of prison. And, you know, when they say that you're looking for love in all the wrong places, that was the story of my life. He was 30 years old. You know, and
I remember that time. For some reason, I thought you were a little older and he was a little younger. I didn't know it was that big of a gap.
Yeah.
I'm sure Melissa knows, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So how long are you up there?
I was up there about 2 years.
And so then you guys come back.
We come back because he starts using again.
So he's a user.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I knew he did, but again, you know, it was part of the life.
Okay, what did you see in him?
He was a good guy to me.
He was good to you.
Yeah, he was good to me. He was kind to me. He paid attention. He never disrespected me.
So different than what you experienced before.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, he was good. He was a good provider too. When we got up there, he started working, took care of us. And I think that's what I wanted, like a home, a family. I wanted us to be together. And eventually his vices kicked back in, and, you know, he did heroin all his life, and that started doing his thing again. And I was like, well, if you're going to do it, let me go back to LA so I can do me. And
At least you know where you know where you're at.
At
you
least
know.
I know where I'm at.
Yeah.
So there we go. 3 kids. My son's 2 months at the time. Come back. I think we're living in Orange County at the time.
How did you have the? I would say it's the fortitude to say, yeah, we're going back. That's it. Because you always seem like, to me, you always been like a boss. I'm gonna handle it. We're gonna do it. And even when you said right now, when you're 14, like, so I'm thinking in my head, like, you always been like that.
I've always been like that. I think I've always felt like there's no choice. I don't have a choice. Like, either that or I fall.
Yeah.
Because nobody's gonna catch me.
Yeah.
You know, and so I have to make sure things happen. Sometimes I got to push people to make things happen.
Right.
And that was the situation. You know, the men that I had experienced in my life, you know, they weren't the brightest light bulbs or the strongest people or, you know, and I've always been like, look, I got kids now. Like, my life depends on it.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have time to play. We don't, let's get to it. And so it was like, we're moving back. That's what we're doing. And he didn't oppose it. So let's do it.
So you're back.
Back in LA.
You're still with him, or
Yes.
and you're trying to make it work.
Yes, trying to make it work. Hoping that, you know, he's back here, that, you know, we'll give it another shot and see what happens. Well, that didn't last too long. You know, he's back at home near his home.
He knows
East LA.
He knows everything, where everything's at.
Yeah.
Okay, how long does that last?
Probably my son was before he turned 2.
So you didn't mess around again. You're just like, hey man, it's not working out. You're out.
Yeah, I was like, I gave you a chance. Okay, by this time, what I felt for you is gone. You know, I don't look up to you like that no more. Now you're a paycheck that's supporting me. And it became a relationship like, let me go do my thing and you do your thing. Take care of the kids on Friday, Saturday while I go out with the girls, and then you're not going to hear nothing from me. And that's how it was. And my mom would always tell him, like, you're going to open up Pandora's box, and that's what happened. I began to experiment and experience life as a woman now.
Because you, from 14 to 21, you're just being a mother, going to school, doing the heavy lifting of the house.
Yep.
And now this is usually what happens, right? The kids are maybe out of Pampers now, and you can leave them with people on the weekend and go do your thing.
Yep.
So what is your thing?
Nightclubs. Partying, coming home. He'd be in the room, come home with the girls, be in the living room, party till the next day.
Just doing whatever.
Drinking, getting high, doing our thing.
So are you starting to spiral a little bit? Or are you... Yeah. So now that's catching up to you.
Yeah.
And how is that affecting the kids?
To be honest, they weren't my priority. You know, if we're going to be honest about it. Obviously, if I'm partying, I'm not paying attention that they need.
So now you're getting away from that woman, you kind of taking care of business, boss. Now you're sounding like, are you just thinking like, I need a break?
While he was there, he gave me that break.
Yeah, right.
You know, because he, like I said, he's not going to tell me nothing. What's he going to tell me when he's doing his thing?
Yeah.
You know, I'd be hungover. He'd make me breakfast. It was that kind of exchange, you know, and, you know, he never talked smack to me or nothing like that. So I got away with what I got away with. You know, I pushed it as far as I could. And then, you know, with that life, you start... men are around, and so for me that was an opportunity to get out of this marriage, and you know, that's what I did. And I got involved with somebody else, and I told them gotta go, and that really is what started spiraling my life out of control, because I started bouncing around and, you know, going from house to house and not really focusing on my kids like I should have. You know?
And how old are your kids now? Or are they?
That's that part of my life from my son was 2 till my oldest was probably 7, 8, around there. And so, but they were with me everywhere. So they got to see everything. They got to see mom party. They got to see mom do her thing. And, you know, hang out with the girls. Eventually, I landed around the corner from my parents' house. I rented a house there, and that was all bad because it was a row full of my homegirls. Across the street was my sister. You know, my other sister was right next to me.
And let me guess, you had the party house?
The whole block was a party house.
The whole neighborhood.
All of our kids, it would be 3, 4 in the morning. Our kids would be running up and down the street. We'd be sitting out there in lawn chairs, partying. Hey, we're watching our kids. You know, that was the excuse. And, you know, that's when we started getting into a little heavier drugs and stuff. And just things started spiraling really out of control.
So are you now just welfare?
No.
No, because you always worked.
I've always worked.
Right? You always worked.
I've always worked.
That's what Melissa said. So I was like, okay. So even you were functioning.
Yeah. I was functioning partier.
Yeah. Functioning partier, pretty much, right?
Yeah. I was trying to balance being a woman with independence and, you know, being this party person, and I had responsibilities. My kids, they were taken care of in that way. I did what I had to do. I worked.
So you kind of turned into your dad a little bit, where a little bit of neglect, but you did provide.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the feelings department shut down.
Right.
I was numb. I didn't feel anything. I love my kids. I provide. I felt like I provide for you. That's enough.
Right.
That's enough. You know, I was a mom at such a young age that became my whole my entity. That's who I was. And at 14, who knows how to be a parent?
Yeah.
You know, there's no playbook to that. You know, there's no playbook when you're 30 and have a kid, but when you're 14, you're a kid. It's a whole different ballgame because you're a kid.
Right.
You're not even learning how to be a woman at this stage. You have to grow up really early. And so I'm 21, 22, 23, that age when I'm, you know, it's on. You know, it's party all the time. Monday through Thursdays, it was okay, pretty chill.
And what were you doing for a living?
I was working in like accounts receivable for a plumbing company.
So
good to me. They were good to me. Good job. Yeah. Go home for lunch, smoke a joint, go back. It was good. That was my way of dealing with kids and life.
So I always ask people that are addicts, you do drugs for a reason, right? I mean, initially you started because you want to party, but eventually you do it because you're trying to cover something.
Yeah. You
know, you're trying to, whatever it may be, you know, I can't deal with this every second of the day with all these kids. I'm too young for this. I just want to, you know, there's always something that some pain, something that you're trying to get away from or cover.
Yeah. Alcohol was always that for me. And then when the kids were at that age, weed was like a stress reliever. Like I thought things were funny once I was high. Like, I don't care if you're jumping off the curtains. It's funny to me at that point. You know, and so that was my coping mechanism then was, you know, using weed at that time, and then shortly after progressed to meth. You know, and it was one of those things that, hey, try it. You're going to like it.
Okay, so meth, I mean, it wasn't super popular back then.
Right.
It was kind of just coming on the scene. Mm-hmm. Did you think, like, it's not a big deal? And what was the initial feeling when you did it?
When you don't care about yourself, you're like, who cares? You know?
Whatever.
All right. You know, and so I did it with the girls, and, man, it was a great feeling. Like, I could clean my house to death. I could.
Oh. So you weren't the not enough meth person. You were the hyper.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was like I could work. I was at work, like kicking butt at work. I was cleaning. I was going until it was time to crash.
Yeah, because as a mother of 3, you probably were exhausted.
All the time. There was times I was working 2 jobs. So I had to stay up. That was my excuse. I had to stay up.
Right.
You know, and it evolved from there. And then, you know, there wasn't enough money. I was struggling. You know, I'm a single mom, 3 kids, you know, no steady relationship at the time. It was just, you know, having fun and doing what I wanted to do whenever I wanted to do it. And then my bright mind decides, like, I need to make some real money. And I get into starting to take dope in prisons. And this wasn't his idea. This was mine. You know, I know a lot of people.
So you met a guy that was in prison.
My kid's dad.
And then you decide to, hey, let's make some money here.
I'm like, no, it was like, listen, I got to support your kids.
Oh, so it was your idea.
It was my idea.
See, this is where I'm afraid of you sometimes, Gabby. It's like you're a gangster.
I had to feed kids. I had to take care of it.
Okay, so that was
that was the reason.
Because some people, I was listening to this guy the other day, and he was saying, I became a mobster because out of need, out of necessity, not because I wanted. I liked the lifestyle. Is because, you know, I had my father needed help, and the only way I seemed to help him quickly is for me to become what he was at one time, and so that's why he got into life. He always says it was like a need. It was a necessity. Yeah. So for you, there was a need.
It was a need, but I also liked the life. I'm not gonna kid you. You know, it was what I was accustomed to. You know, now I'm a little older, so I know, you know, people that are in and out of prison, or, you know, that life.
Right.
I started becoming. I started adapting to it. So I go see him, and I'm like, look, I got your kids to feed. I know what how much dope goes in here for. Let's do it. And he tells me no for a while. He tells me no. And he finally gives in. Remember, he's a heroin addict, so guess
he
what?
Needs something.
He needs something.
Yeah.
You know, and so, that's how it starts happening. You know, and I'm pretty good at it because I'm pretty smart. You know, I know what I'm doing. I don't associate with people. Don't let people know my business, blah, blah, blah. Taking dope in. Making money. Finally, I'm like, breathe.
Are you making good money?
Yeah.
Oh.
Not as good as I should have, which I learned later because he was using more.
Oh, so he was getting his supply.
I was like, hey, I got to take care of my kids. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
Just give me my cut. And then it started expanding. Like, I would give packages to other girls and, you know, get money from there. And so it started networking.
I didn't even know this part of your life. This is... I mean, we've always been friends, and it's always been all love, and I didn't even know that. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. And how long did that go on?
That went on for about a year. And I was
Never were worried about getting caught?
I wasn't, because I was pretty confident on how and what I was doing. And then, you know, everything comes to an end. And I was with an individual who was doing the same thing, and neither one of us knew. We were in the same car, and they actually were onto her. Oof. And so when we were walking up to visit, they had a warrant for her. They had phone tapped her, did all that stuff, wiretapped her. They had a warrant for her, but because I was in the car, they had to pull me to the side and strip search me and do all that stuff. But I was cool because I didn't have nothing on me that day. It was going to be for the next day.
Wow.
I was like, no worries.
Wow.
And I had my kid. I had my kids with me.
That would have been all bad.
Yeah. So they take us back there, and, you know, she's not used to this life. This girl's, you know, a good girl, just was caught up with somebody that used her. And me, I'm like, I ain't tripping.
You got nothing on me. I just came to
on
visit
me.
my old
Bye.
man. I'm out.
So they let me go. But then I see the dogs in her car, and my bag's in there. And we usually would stop and drop it somewhere, but we were rushing that day. And my kids, when all this happened, I had to place them in a child care center right there at the prison. And I go to the child care center, and I could see from the window, shoot, they're at the car. They're going to find it. Oh. They're going to find it.
They have the dog on it.
They have dogs there.
There's no way. They're going to find it.
You know, so I'm like, all right, I got to prepare. I'm calling my sister. Hey, this is what's going on. You need to come get the kids. This isn't in Northern California.
It's not around the block.
Yeah. So I don't want my kids to see me get arrested, so I walk out. And it happens to be that I was walking out, and my younger sister was visiting at the sister institution She drives by. And
What the heck?
yeah, it just happened to be that. And I said, hey, you're going to have to get the kids. Get the kids. And she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I'm going to jail right now. So they cuff me up, take me, whatever, book me. You know, I know what to do. And nothing, zero. You're not getting nothing. I assert my Fifth Amendment. Take me. And
So how did you know that though? How did you know? Don't
do
say
that.
nothing. Hey, I'm exercising my Fifth Amendment. You know, I don't have to say anything.
because of the life I've lived.
It was just.
It was something that was taught to you.
You knew the game.
Yeah, you knew the game. You know, you don't ever say anything to nobody.
Which is funny because when you watch these shows,
Yeah.
like First 48 or whatever,
Yeah.
I always trip out on it because I'm like, they take them into the interrogation room, and I'm just thinking, like,
What are you doing?
why is he saying anything? And then they just start
Yeah.
pouring it out, or they say something stupid, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Get
They're not your friend."
I would talk to my gangster friend about this, right? He's like, "These people are dumb.
Yeah.
These people are dumb." And then my brother-in-law, the attorney, comes, and I go, "Art," and he was from the neighborhood too.
Yeah.
He grew up in East LA, so he was like, "They're dumb.
Yeah.
You get arrested, you ask for your attorney, you don't say nothing."
Yeah.
And so it's kind of funny because you hear these, you see these shows, and the guys are supposed to be gangsters and know what
Yeah.
to do. They get arrested, and they're just incriminating themselves.
Yeah, I mean, I love the life. And I knew it. Remember, my kid's dad was much older than I was. So he put me up on a lot of game. He was an old school. He was really old school. So I got to learn a lot. And, you know, I was around the whole thing. You know, I had my homeboys. And I was always, there was something in me that I was loyal. Like, I was just not, you're not going to break me. That's not me. So, you know, I go in and I bail out and start fighting my case out here. But during that time, like, I lost control. I was like, I know I'm going to go in, so I might as well have fun before I go in.
How long are you fighting this case?
Probably less than a year.
Wow.
Yeah. Because they were trying to intimidate me and somebody...
Give up other people.
Well, yeah, but I was like, no. But then they brought in the fact that somebody died. They said that it was off the dope that I brought in, and trying to intimidate me, and that I could get, you know, charged with that.
How
and
could
I'm
you
like,
prove that? You can't.
Not cooperating. There's nothing that you're gonna do. Because to me, in my head, I was like, he was a second striker, my kid's dad. If I did something, he was gone. Like
Right.
for me, I was like, I'll do less than a year. So what? You know.
How old are you right here?
Probably 25.
No sweat.
No.
So you fight the case.
Fight the case. I get get found guilty. I don't even take it to trial. I've pleaded no contest. They gave me like 265 days. But remember, this is in Monterey County, so this ain't even my backyard. So I end up during that time. I meet my ex-husband, and he put me on a whole different level game. He was a dope dealer. He was in motels, that kind of life.
Okay. So this is the part where I have to ask, as your friend, because I remember, and I knew all three guys. I had conversations with them. You know, first one I knew probably better than the other two, but I liked them all. I will admit, every time you got with another guy, it seemed, from my perspective, outside looking in, like you would introduce me to them. Hey, how's it going? And man, and it would be like, the guy's rowdy. Like, you know what I mean? Like back when you were a kid, and with the 18-year-old, I mean, it was, we knew him, and it was like, yeah, he's kind of street guy. And then you get with your two babies' daddy, and I'm like, oh man, he's from, like, he's a little bit more rowdy. Then the last one, I was like, yo, this dude is crazy. Gabby's crazy. Like, she is getting crazier and crazier with, I didn't know with the life, but with men.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it was rough. He was motel living, so I was there with him, and he was slanging dope and carrying guns, and that's just how it was. It became very normal to me. It was a fast life. And
was it exciting? Because you hear, like, these women, you know, on these documentaries, and they're like, I liked it. It was exciting. It was crazy. It was scary, but it was exciting, and I got high off the excitement.
Yeah, it was all of that. It was all of that. So I even knew then, though, like, Gabby, you're smarter than that. But I you know, it was too fun. It was fun. It was exciting. It was my head wasn't in the right place, you know. And I ended up getting involved with this guy, and then I go, sorry, I gotta go. Time out. I gotta go do some time, a little bit of time here. So I go do my time, and this is the first time I'm clean for a while. And I start, like, realizing, like, what am I doing to my kids? What am I doing? And I asked my parents, don't bring my kids. I don't want to see them when I'm here. They don't need to see me here.
So being busted in jail gives you time to think.
Yeah. It gives me time to think, starts putting things in perspective. You know, you always know, like, people come in and out of your life, but my kids are forever. But that gave me an opportunity really to sink in and think about that, you know. And I knew my parents did bring my kids, and seeing them was just, like, crushing to me. Like, my son's my baby, you know, and he loves his mama, and he missed me. And I missed my daughter's graduation from elementary. I missed my son's kindergarten graduation. I missed my middle daughter's birthday. And I started realizing the impact it's having on their life.
I mean, yeah, it ends up catching up to you. You get to think about it. Your kids come to you to visit you. How old are they now?
My son's 5. It's 5 or 6 around that time. So then 7, and then 10.
So they know what's going on. They know mom's.
Oh, my kids knew games since they were little. They knew what was up since they were little.
Yeah. And what's first time in jail?
Yeah.
How rough was that?
It was rough because I'm from LA, and these girls are all Northerners. So and you know it, they know it, and so you got to do what you got to do. And then I end up going to an area where it was single cell for most of the part. But it's not like the guys either. It's not like that. Girls tend to be more, you know, not as crazy as the guy section. It that does get involved, but it's not as bad as it could have been with the guys.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm just doing my time, going to self-help groups in there, you know, just waiting it out.
You know, as a girl that grew up with God, is there any sense of that still, or you're just kind of like, nah?
I've always been connected with God through my good or bad times. Like, I genuinely love God. Have loved God since before my mom and dad started going to Praise Chapel. I have had encounters even from before there. I always knew that He's the only one
to come back to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That loved me unconditionally. That's how I felt. And so I always, like, man, I messed up again, God. You know, and it's like, but you're my dad. Like, you're the only one that really loves me like that. And you'll take me back. You know, so I've always had a connection with God. No matter where I've been in my life, I've just genuinely loved God. Finish out my time there, come home, and I'm like, okay, I'm focused. I got to get back on. I know I got to work. I know.
And is your husband still wilding?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. He's calmed down in a sense, but all the underlying issues are there. Still the there. Anger, the you know, and I get back, you know, I get out, he picks me up out of my mom's house, and it's, my parents like, oh, there's this guy again. You know, so me and my dad have always bumped heads. Never been on the same page. I knew I had to get out. Being in my mom's house was not going to happen for me. So that, I was out within 3 months. I was working and moved out with him and the kids. But, you know, and I've always been a private person. So whatever I was going through with him or with anything in my life, very few people knew. Yeah. You know, so there I go living in Cudahy of all places, Cudahy. And,
hey, I lived there for a while, so.
That was his stomping grounds. And it was really bad. It was really, really bad. The abuse, the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, he was cheating all the time. I'm trying to make it, I'm trying to work, and, he's a dope man. So here's like, here. It's too easy not to. So I dabble in and out. I'm playing footsies here. Trying to do it, trying to not, he gets me into a couple predicaments, some heavy predicaments that I had to get myself out of, because he certainly wasn't the man to step up and take care of it. I always had to take care of what I had to take care of, get myself out of situations. And it eventually, that marriage lasted 10 years. I was with him for about 12 years.
Wow.
And it only lasted that long because I made it last that long. It certainly wasn't anything that he was doing. He was out there running amok, in and out of prison. When he was free, it was all bad. It was bad. In fact, my daughter was laughing yesterday. She brought up an old memory and I'm just like, those things never leave kids' head.
Yeah, right?
They just don't. Like, you can get better and you can become a better person, but your kids are like your diary.
Yeah.
Well, remember in 1993 when you did this at this time? Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
They don't forget.
They don't forget.
So do you leave him or he leaves you? Or it just...
He goes to prison for like 6 years. And that was the best thing that could happen to me, because it gave me the opportunity to find me. I cleaned up, started going to church, focused on my kids, working, getting, now I'm starting to do better. Started to find a career at this point.
And the drug habit, when did that stop?
I dabbled in and out for
Okay.
years, but it stopped there when he went away because the dope was gone.
And you're like, I'm not spending money on that
I'm
no
not
more.
going to go look for it. So I'm trying to do for my kids, and then he comes home, and it's crazy. But now I'm different. Now I know what it is to be sober. Now I know what it is to be financially secure. I don't need you. You're actually a burden to me now.
Wow.
Because you're not bringing nothing to the table. And I'm not just talking financially. I'm talking emotionally. We were never on the same page.
Yeah, because if there's abuse and then he goes away, he needs you more than you need him.
For sure. But I felt like I'm married to this guy. Like, I didn't want to fail again.
You wanted to be loyal.
I wanted to be loyal. I just didn't want to divorce again. Like, I wanted to make this last. I wanted, not because he deserved it, but because, like, I didn't want to be divorced again. Like, what are you doing? Here's another one. I didn't want that.
Yeah.
I wanted to try as hard as I could.
To make it work.
But trying as hard as I could broke me. Eventually broke me. So I did come to a point where it just got so violent and, abusive and the control, I couldn't breathe anymore. And I ended up leaving. But I found my mind cracking at that point for years. And, it wasn't the breakup of that marriage. It was like I felt I lost myself. I allowed so much stuff to go on. And I'm not sitting here blaming him because I allowed it. But you allow it because you don't love yourself. Like, how do you love yourself if you're going to allow that stuff? I didn't know how to.
It's a weird thing for people to understand that emotion. I mean, like I said, you had the fortitude, the mental fortitude to be a 14-year-old girl and say, no, I'm going to handle this business. But then you're clinging onto a guy that's just a heavy burden anchor to wherever you're trying to sail to.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when you're 14 years old trying to be an adult. You don't have time to develop what's right and what's wrong, what's healthy, what's not healthy, your boundaries. When you don't have self-esteem and you don't love yourself because things that stem from your childhood, like, how do you expect somebody to love you when you can't even love yourself? So I'm at that point where that relationship is ending. I found myself, like, literally my mind was breaking. Like, I couldn't stop crying, and I didn't know why. I couldn't, like, my spirit just like broke, my mind broke, and I was spiraling mentally, like, and it, like I said, it wasn't because that relationship was over. It was like all the years of abuse, of not feeling love from childhood to that point. It finally caught up to me. Like, here I was, I always prided myself in, like, I'm always going to handle business. I'm always going to take care of my kids. You're never going to see me break. But everybody has a breaking point.
Yeah.
Everybody does. I don't care how strong you are. And that 14-year-old little girl came back, and she was broken beyond repair at that point. I didn't know how. I was just uncontrollable. You know, I remember listening to a CD by Sheila Walsh, a Christian writer, and she said that she felt like her mind broke, and it described exactly how I was feeling, and I didn't know how to fix it, and I knew that I was in trouble, like literally in trouble. I was at work and I couldn't even function anymore. I was crying on my way home to home and work and back, and it was weird. It was like something I couldn't control, and I'm a control, like that's a problem for me. I need to control everything. And I ended up getting help. I got help.
It's weird. I talked to my friend. He came in here. He's a doctor, Mario Rocha, and we were saying how all the feelings, if they don't get fixed, you just bury them, but they're buried alive. So they're covered, and you don't always see them or feel them. They're covered and they're right here, still hovering. And eventually those things that were buried alive become unburied. And it always ends up happening. He was telling me. He was saying it'll eventually come out. And it might come out like in your situation, it might come out something violent, it might come out something, just where you just lose your mind almost,
Yeah, so I prided myself in not letting my kids see me break. I never did. I needed them to see, like, I got this. Don't, there's nothing for you guys to worry about. Mom will take care of it. But this was out of my control. And I started just breaking. And at that time, my husband, who I'm married to now, came back into my life. And he's been my homeboy since, I've known him since I was 12. He went to prison at an early age. And then at that point of my life, he came back. And I'm like, he's back. My friend is back. Like, I needed my friend, and that's exactly what he was. He was my friend during that time, and I'm getting help, and I have him.
What kind of help are you getting?
I'm going to see a psychiatrist, a psychologist. I'm going to intense therapy. Which
is crazy, because in the neighborhood, that's like taboo.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I knew that if I didn't, there was suicide in my thoughts.
Yeah.
And so I ain't going out like that. My kids deserve better than that. I deserve better than that. I knew something inside of me was like, no.
Yeah.
Go get help. And I did. And I was going to like therapy twice a day.
Wow.
For 6 weeks. And then after that, I was, doing it like twice a week.
It does wonders, right?
It does a lot of things.
Like, I tell people that all the time.
Yeah.
Like, just go.
Yeah.
Go to a professional.
Yep.
They know what to say and how to get things out of you. You're going to feel good.
Yep.
Just go get help. Like, hey, and it does a wonder.
Yeah. To a professional, because I knew that person didn't know me.
Yeah.
They weren't going to judge me. And like, if you have a broken arm, you're going to go get a cast and get it fixed, right? If you have diabetes, you're going to go get insulin.
Right.
Well, my mind was broken. My mind was broke. My heart was broken. My spirit was broken. And I needed that help. And even if it was just talking to that person, even if it was, and I was like, before I was like, I'm not getting on no happy pills.
Yeah.
You're not going to, that's not going to, and she explained that to me.
You already been there.
Yeah. Like, I'm not doing that. She's like, wait a minute. If, like I said, if your arm is broken, you're going to get a cast. Well, your mind is broken, and sometimes there's a chemical imbalance in you. and you need help to transition back into a normal phase. And I was like, I'm going to take it. Whatever you give me, whatever you tell me, I'm going to do it. Because I have whatever I've been doing hasn't worked. So I did, and teach you a lot of things. How to diary.
How hard is that for a person that's always in control to finally say things are out of control?
I think I didn't even have a choice. You know, it was
I need
either
help.
Yeah, it was either get help or die.
No choice again.
No choice. Yeah, and I deserve better. My kids deserve their mom whole, and I did, and it was like a life changer for me. And then my husband coming in, who's now my husband, coming into my life, and he's going through a transitional phase where he's starting to change a lot of things in his life. And I'm going along with that ride with him. And he starts teaching me things that blow my mind. Like, for the first time, I felt like I loved myself. Like I had to forgive myself for the things that I did. How I've harmed my kids. Because your kids don't walk out of this unscathed.
No.
You know, I still live with the scars that I created in them. You know, and you know, going through a lot of the self-help groups that he was going through, he would send me material. We would talk at visit. You know,
Okay, so your husband, or it wasn't your husband at the time, your friend.
Yeah.
We didn't tell the audience, but he was a lifer.
He's a lifer.
Right?
Yeah.
So when Melissa tells me, oh, Gabby's homeboy, she's with this new guy, and I was like, great. But he's a lifer. And I was like, wait, what? Gabby's crazy. Like, okay. Now, we just keep going from the outside looking in, right? We just keep going up this slippery slope, like, you know, to be like, and I'm just like, okay, like, she went from this guy, and now she's with a lifer. And I was like, well, maybe that's good. Maybe it's a good thing, but okay.
Yeah, so he's a lifer. He became a lifer when he was 18. I've known him all my life. He comes into my life, and, you know, he changes it. And I've never been one to care about people's opinions or ask for it or seek approval. Like, I'm sure people had, like, what the heck's she doing? And I was like, I'm going to do me. I know him, and he knows me, and that's what we're going to do. And I don't care what anybody thinks.
Because there was no promises.
No.
But was it safe? You know, when people look at women that go for lifers, I mean, there is a stigma of, like, maybe it's easier for them because they don't have to deal with the day-to-day, this guy in their life. And he's a lifer. He's going to sweet talk. He's going to say all the nice things because he needs that too in there, especially, right?
Yeah, I would say for a big portion of the population, that's probably true because I've seen it, you know. We were the exception. But
because you knew him.
I knew him really well. You know, we had been actually in each other's lives a couple times since we were kids, you know, in that sense. He always loved me. He's loved me since we were kids. And so I knew, and he always took care of me then. So I knew I had somebody I could trust. He wasn't there and he, from the onset, was not looking for a relationship. He was like, we're back to get, like, we're friends, like, we're back. And it progressed. I wanted more, but he was like, wait a minute, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm a lifer.
Right.
Like,
and at this time, he's already been down,
been down 20 years, maybe.
Gee.
19 years around that time. You know, he had just come back down from Pelican Bay. Had been there many years. And so this is, you know, he finds me and at the right time. And I know when I look back now, it was God's timing. And so he's on this journey now for change. He knew he wanted to change as well. And
was he involved in there? Like, okay. So he's involved. Now he's like, I need something else.
Funny story. He's in the Bay, and he sees the movie The Shack. He doesn't know God. He's, you know, he has no intimate relationship, but he knew that movie spoke to him, and that's what turned on that light bulb for him. He knew, and that life was always there for him, but he knew that for himself, he needed to start making some changes.
Which is huge. For a lifer.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. He's a lifer and he's struggling with that. And he struggled for a while, you know, because that's the life. You're a lifer. This is what you do.
Every day.
Every day. But for some reason, he started going down this path of digging deep and starting to heal old wounds and understanding why was he the way he was. Starting to understand remorse and empathy and all those things and he's taking me along this journey. And so I'm learning like a lot. He's sending me material. We're talking about this. I start getting involved with the lifer community. Started attending seminars and doing things like that, reading on it. And through all of that, like I started healing and he's healing. And we become completely different people, you know, and we start looking at life different. So we end up getting married in there.
Which is crazy because you think of a guy doing life and to be able to look at life different is you know, after 20 years of being in there, it's kind of impossible. You're like I mean, most guys give up hope. Hey, this is what it is. I am who I am.
Yeah.
Nothing's gonna change. But to say, hey, I'm gonna make a turn here. I find somebody.
Yeah.
She's in a turn for her betterment of her life too, and we connected.
Yeah. Yeah, we did. And it's mind blowing, and it's hard to explain that to people because you feel like you're selling him and us to people. And I'm like, I don't need to. I know me and him. You know, I know where I'm at, and it became evident in my life because, like, my kids were like, Mom, whatever's happening, it's making you happy. It's changing you. I start feeling like the weight of anger and resentment. I learned to forgive my dad. I learned to forgive myself. That was the biggest one. I carried that around for a long time because I harmed my kids. And because of that, my kids have went through some things. They still are going through things. So I had to learn to forgive myself and learn how to set boundaries. That was huge for me. The loyalty thing, because that's what you grow up doing. You're going to be loyal. I was loyal to individuals that didn't deserve my loyalty. You know, even family members, you know, and you give because that's who you are. Like, I'm going to do, you need out of that jam? You need me to pick you up because they want to shoot you? Or you need out of this jam or this? I got you. But I started realizing it wasn't being reciprocated here. And I'm like, that's not loyalty. That's stupidity.
Yeah, one-sided.
Yeah. I know who I am. I'm loyal, but I started changing the mentality and started setting boundaries. You know, even with family, even with friends. Like, I'll do this, but I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm here for this, and I'm going to tell you because I love you, but don't expect me to sit here and pat you on the back. Or, you know, I just started changing my mentality. And it threw some people off. Some people left my life, and it is what it is. But it did. It changed me for the better, being with this man. And we got married. You know, a lot of stuff just started changing in my life. Like really the weight just started coming off. And doing a lot of healing. I asked my kids for forgiveness. You know, that's one thing, even in my dad's death, like what I learned was I don't want to leave this earth, my kids not knowing how much I love them and how much I'm sorry for the things that I caused in their life. And those are things that you learn along the way.
Do you feel that your dad, when he passed, that there was still some stuff left on the table?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't think my dad had the capacity of owning up to the things that he had done.
That's a very good word, and I use that word a lot because I think when you understand the capacity of somebody you're dealing with, you realize it's not all their fault.
Yeah.
And you just realize, like, they just don't have the capacity to be a good father or be a good friend. Like, I've learned that over the years where it's like, I'm expecting way more.
Oh, yeah.
And then I have to say, why am I expecting so much? Because I'm like you. I give so much, and then I'm expecting that back. And when they don't give it back, then I'm like, hey, what the heck?
Yeah.
Right? But then I've learned to realize the capacity of my friends or family is only so much sometimes. Of course, you got those great friends, great family that'll do anything for you, and they give it right back. But there is a capacity that we have to understand with some people that they just don't have it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
And I had to understand the whole picture, because from a selfish point of view, I was a wounded young girl, and all I wanted him to say, I'm sorry, I screwed you up. I'm sorry. I know I did this, and that, and I'm sorry. That's all I ever wanted. But I look at it as a whole now, and my dad had a jacked up life. And so he did what he knew how to do. He didn't have a father figure. He didn't have a mother figure. So he became the man he became. And it's okay. That's his life. He's going to answer to the Lord for whatever, you know. And and he did. He died and never was resolved. And that's okay too.
Yeah.
Because I had to forgive him for me.
Yes.
Like, you didn't ask me, but I'm going to give you because I need that released.
Right.
You know, it's okay, Dad. I love you because you're my dad. And I'm not going to sit here and continue to look in that bag with all those resentments and bring it back up. It's just it's not worth it. You know, it's not going to create that baggage in my life anymore. I'm not going to give it that light.
I think I went to your dad's funeral. I would say the highlight and kind of sad part of the funeral, I would have to say, was your mother talking about him. And I remember sitting there and thinking, your mom, like, gee, she basically poured out her heart and said, you know, that everything she wanted from him, she never got. But in the last couple of months that he was sick, he turned into this guy that was somebody totally different. And I was like,
how sad.
It was beautiful, I guess, for your mom's healing, right? Yeah. But it was sad because they were, 50 years together, yeah. You know? And so I just remember being like, oh my God, like, and just like, you know, like breaking for your mom. Like, yeah. It was just like, oh, like really felt that during the funeral that day.
Yeah, I think she struggled with that after he passed, because imagine what it is to live your entire life not being the person to your mate.
Yeah.
How do you live with that? Like, I know when I look in my husband, I know I'm the one. I know that. I feel it. He shows me. He tells me. I know it without a shadow of a doubt. I could not imagine living in a marriage for 50 years and not being that one. Like, how painful that must be.
Right.
We've had that conversation, my mom and I, and she's very open with us. We've had very many conversations about this, and she breaks down and she'll tell me, you're a lucky woman that you have the man that loves and adores you the way you do. He looks at you and it says it all. And I'm saddened by that.
Yeah, she never experienced that.
You know, and so we've all learned some lessons through this. You know, she's doing great. She's back in school.
I'm sure she's in the yard doing stuff, right?
Yeah, she's doing good.
Somebody posted a picture. I don't know if it was you or maybe one of your sisters, and she's in the yard working. I think my mom went to visit her and seen her out there. But now, your husband. Yeah. So the story doesn't end with him doing life.
No.
Tell us about that.
So he goes in at 18, and he actually is fighting a case with double murder and then another murder case. In the case that the double murder, he ends up getting 15 to life. And then the other murder, he ends up getting manslaughter. So together it's 15 to life plus 10 years. In the one that he was in for the double murder, he was not the shooter. He was in the vehicle, but he was not the shooter. But he got convicted for life on that one. Ironically, for the one he got manslaughter, he was the shooter. And he got manslaughter. I think they felt like it was a deal. We got him anyways with life.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
What's the point? Well, you fast forward 24 years, and a Senate bill gets introduced, which changes the California felony murder rule that says if you weren't a direct participant in the crime, like you were not the shooter and you didn't aid and abet, and you there was certain theories in law that if those didn't apply, then you would be eligible to have your sentence overturned or resentenced according to the participation of the crime.
Okay.
So I'm lobbying, going up to Sacramento, putting in the work, getting his file, doing all this stuff. I'm like, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. We start seeing it pass each level, and finally passes. But California's slow. Judges don't like change like that. That's a huge change in reform. Huge change, because California has the biggest population of lifers. And prior to Governor Brown, there was a less than 0.2% of lifers getting out. Didn't happen. You were coming out with the toe tag. You're going to come out in a coffin.
Yeah.
Governor Brown came in and started setting the tone for reform. And so this bill actually happened under him. So this happens, and I'm excited. But knowing me being in law, I know it's too early in the game. Judges are not used to this. District attorneys don't know how to handle this. Let's slow down. Let's not do anything. Let a year go by. You're seeing all kinds of cases being denied. I'm like, okay, they don't like it. I go see a couple of attorneys. They tell me, you know what? I show them all his paperwork, his transcripts, everything. We don't think he qualifies. Don't waste your money. Two different attorneys. And I'm like,
based on what though? Why doesn't he qualify?
Because,
or in their opinion, because something he had said in his parole hearing that could incriminate him, that would disqualify him. So we're talking, and he's not very proactive in the sense, like, he doesn't like to get disappointed. He don't want to. I mean, when you do that many years,
Yeah.
you're not optimistic
No.
about stuff like that.
No.
You're like, okay.
No, yeah, whatever. And I'm like, what do we got to lose? What's the worst they can say? No? And he's like, all right, put in the paperwork. So I send him the petition. All you have to do is sign it. All you got to do is sign it. I send you the envelopes with stamps. Send it back. This was in June of last year. And then by July, the court had received his petition and accepted it. Accepted it for review. Well, that's first step. They're going to review it. Nothing much. I know how this works.
He's
Probably
like,
whatever.
yeah.
Let me get her off my back.
Right. Did you see the Dodgers score? It's like,
he's not thinking much. He's not thinking much. And I know a lot of people that have filed these petitions. It takes about 2-3 years to resolve them. I'm like, it's going to take 2-3 years for us to even get anywhere. Nope. I get this amazing public defender. I link up with him.
A public defender.
Okay. I don't even
which have a bad rap, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm ready. I'm willing to pay a private attorney, but they're telling me no. I'm wasting my money. So I'm like, all right, I don't have no choice. I'm going to PD.
Wow.
So get a public defender. It gets assigned to a special unit. So I get a hold of this public defender. I introduce myself. Amazing public defender, Jonathan Cruz from LA County Public Defender's Office. We talk often, email often. He keeps me updated. I'm listening to court calls. And then I'm like, oh, wait. He's like, I'm going to get him out. And I'm like, I don't even want to tell him at this point.
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, I don't want to mess him up.
You don't play like that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
He's like, your husband's got a good case. So we're progressing. Judge says, I need the defense to brief it, blah, blah, blah. By March of this year, I know that the district attorney said, we're not fighting it. We think he should be released. They don't oppose it. So at this point, they're reaching out to the families of the victims, because that's law. They got to do that. They don't respond.
Huh.
On April 1st, they resentence him. They take away his life sentence. So the 15 to life sentence was dropped. The charge was dropped for murder. It was dropped to assault with a firearm, and he was sentenced to a year. A year, which he's done 28 at this point.
Right.
He's done the 10 for the manslaughter. He's done a year for this crime. And he gets released a week after.
Okay, that's a crazy story.
Yeah.
That's a crazy story.
Yep.
So, all right, I have some questions after his release, but leading up to his release. Okay, so that is a big, you're in the legal field. That is a big issue on many sides, right? Yeah. I just had Trino Jimenez. Mm-hmm. He was actually a victim. His brother got murdered, but he was an advocate for his brother's murder, which was amazing to me. Like, gee, bro. And in talking to him, I kind of just told him I've always been a crime and punishment type guy. Mm-hmm. That's my thing. Like it's even with our friend Ruben, that's on death row. It was kind of like, man, but he did do that. Like it's awful. But with the exception of this, a couple of things, and it's gonna sound weird to a lot of people out there from me. Yeah. But being convicted as a youth, I think that's rough, because when you're a youth and then being convicted, I don't know if your husband was convicted as involved in the gang life. And I say, was it a gang deal? Yeah. Okay, so my two criteria, which is going to sound a little bit off on the gang criteria, but when you're involved in that life, it's like kill or be killed, right? I mean, it's not like an innocent person, or it's in that lifestyle of you're going to take my life or I'm going to take yours. Yeah. So it doesn't make it right. Don't get me wrong out there, everybody. It doesn't make it right. It's an awful thing for everybody. But I think those guys kind of know the game they're playing. You know, one of my good friends told me, when he got into his neighborhood in Pomona, he remembered getting jumped in, and his uncle told them, and the new little homeboys that got jumped in, he goes, some of you are going to go to jail, and some of you are going to die. And he said, it was real then. Like they realized it. They were youngsters, teenagers. So I agree with a couple of things. One is, in the heat of the crime, like that's got to be looked at. Like what was the circumstances of that crime? The age, I do have a big problem with that. It is to do something as a youth. You don't have
the mental capacity.
Yeah, you don't have the mental capacity. You don't have you have the influence of maybe older people that are in your life that don't have your best interests at heart. And then, like you said, with the victims, I think that, I asked Trino that too. Do you think victims their families, should have some sort of, at least a say, not whether they go free or not, but to speak their thing. I mean, it is a slippery slope.
Yeah, that's a really wide topic, because California is notorious for punishing to the extreme.
Right.
They've got all these enhancements. It's insane. It's like your intent is to put these people away for life, and not even thinking about the factors that caused them to do what they did.
Right.
Like, start rehabilitating some of these individuals so they don't recidivate and go back to prison. There's a reason the majority of Black and brown youth is because they come from broken homes.
Right. Yeah.
They're jacked up. So what's your outlet? Anger, violence. That's what you do. That's your gang becomes your family. And I say that, and I've been on both sides. My grandson's father was murdered. I've had to raise my grandson, from his dad being murdered. My daughter was shot, almost died this year. I know what it is. And even like in my daughter's situation, I didn't have anger. Like you said, you're in the game. You're in the game. I've been on both sides. And so I think that people want to look at it from a black and white perspective, and there's so much more to it.
Yeah, because it is gray. In talking to Trino and even my brother-in-law about that, which he was a public defender for a long time. He just went back to private practice. He's like, there's no black and gray when it comes to that. I mean, black and white when it comes to that. There's a lot of gray.
Yeah.
And I even asked Trina, I said, like a murderer of such, like, is that straight evil, maybe like a Dahmer or Manson, right? Like
Richard Ramirez.
Yeah, Richard Ramirez. Like, we're like, no,
Yeah.
you do not need to come back. But a guy that's kind of been like rehabilitated, or what has he done with his time in there? Is he just getting in trouble? Is he just doing all kinds of negative stuff? Just whatever, or going to school or staying out of trouble. I mean, all those factors, and then the factors, like you said, of where did they come from? I think I do empathize with Ruben's plight. He didn't come. We know Ruben. He's in death row. I do have a heart for that, because I knew he had a rough life, and I do agree that those factors. So my heart has softened for a lot of that, because I began to look at that. Even when you posted about your husband Guinana, I was like, in my heart of hearts, I really don't agree, like, with the youth being sentenced to life, because it's life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, like I said, California has some really hard sentences. I think, and I believe, if you do the crime, you got to do time. I believe that. But do it according to the crime.
Right.
My son went to prison, and they were trying to hit him with 28 years. First time he shot a gun in the air. So that warrants 28 years?
Yeah.
Like, you're not looking at him as a human being. You're looking at him like, let's get him off the street and let him rot in there. What do you think is going to happen in there? They're going to become animals and savages. They're going to learn. They're going to get their street education in there.
Right.
Why don't we try to focus on this angry young man that grew up without his father? How about that one?
Yeah.
I had to pay a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars, to get his sentence to 7 years. But not many people can do that. And so they end up getting 28 years because of the enhancements.
And do you think this, I asked my brother-in-law this, is it a racial thing, or is it an economical thing?
I think it's both.
I always feel it's a class thing, an economical thing. Because I feel if you have money, you have a way better chance of getting out.
Yeah.
A lot of people blame it on the race, and maybe
there's a component to that.
The climate of these neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods, are black and brown.
Yeah,
it's a fact. But I always feel like if you have money, or if you have a good lawyer like your husband ended up getting, which is public defender, super rare to get anybody that cares, But what would you say? What would be your opinion on that?
I think our inner communities are just flooded with injustices like that. And it happens to be black and brown communities. You take a look around, this youth is lost. They're running amok, and then they get into the penal system, and it just gets worse. It gets worse, and it's hard to not put race into it. Because if you look at the prison population, the majority is black and brown.
Right.
If we talk about it from a socioeconomic class, if you put a black or brown individual in Newport Beach, guess who's going to get pointed out first? It's going to be them. They're going to be the outsiders, So I do think they both play a major factor. I think with all the reform going on, we're going to see some improvement. I think that some of the stuff is too extreme. I think we need to find a balance.
Okay, I do think some of the stuff's extreme.
Yeah.
I think like this new DA, I mean, some of the stuff is just like too extreme, where it almost becomes lawless. Where we're not, Gascon, where we're letting people go free, are no bail. And I don't want to get into every detail, everything, but I think it's a little bit too lenient, where we're allowing it more to happen, where it's almost like, let's defund police, and let's also reduce all these sentences, and let's make these crimes really low and no bail. And I think it's like it creates this big, it almost makes it worse. I'm not saying that punishment is the greatest thing. I believe rehabilitation, which there's got to be something in the prisons that say, hey, if you do this, you can, we'll reduce this. I think that's huge. Like, you go to these classes, you get an education, whatever. I think that's huge, but not everybody does it, and not everybody offers it.
Yeah.
But I think when it's too lenient, I think it's just it creates a climate of crime.
Yeah.
And it gets dangerous for everybody.
I think he's definitely. I think change is difficult for everybody.
Yeah.
So when we've had a legacy in LA and California of being very conservative and hard on crime.
Right.
So when you have somebody that comes in and shakes it up, of course it's going to be extremely uncomfortable for people, because you point out those extremes, like the no bail. But if somebody was to be rich and they can bail out for that same crime, how fair is it for the guy in the neighborhood not to bail out because he doesn't have the funds, and so he's got to sit there in the county jail for 3 years?
But what do you say to I'll play devil's advocate with you here. What do you say to the kid that does make it out or doesn't get involved in that lifestyle and grows up in the same neighborhood? Why is he able to do that?
I think people deal with trauma differently. I grew up there was 8 of us, and each one of us dealt with that trauma differently. So you came from the same pot. My husband, he's the only one that went to prison out of his siblings. How do you explain that? Because he just dealt with trauma different. His DNA was woven differently. He reacted differently. He responded differently. And so I think when you look at it as a whole, it's difficult to understand. You got to start parsing it out.
Yeah, because I think it's multiple facets of a problem. Yeah. I really do. I mean, do I say, I look at guys and I work with a lot of guys. I'm in construction. A lot of guys come to construction because their lives were, that nobody would hire them, right? Your husband's in construction now, right? So, and I always go, it's a great trade. It's a great thing. You can make great money. Like, I love it because guys get a second chance. I have so many guys. I mean, we had a kid that had 25 years, got convicted when he was like 17 years old, did 13 years, got out. He's just happy to be out and alive and working and making a good living. I look at those stories and I'm super happy for those stories. And it was a lot of rehabilitation. But then there's guys that just constantly
in and out.
I mean, and it creates a revolving door.
Yep.
What do you say to that culture where it's just like nothing changed? Like, your husband, I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
I mean, I seen pictures that you post of him, and I know he's kind of shy. He probably doesn't even want me. But with his first check,
yep.
With going to his first Dodger game in decades.
Yep.
Decades. Yep. Since the last time they won the championship. Yeah. Which is pretty cool. I thought that was funny. But, I mean, I'm happy. But I just think that is your husband's case and the way it turned out and the way he turned out, what is that percentage? So people out there know, like, what is that percentage that a guy like him comes out and does as well as he's doing?
So I think in the population in prison, you got your lifers and you got your determinate sentences, people that have a date. I think that the people doing life, you'll see a higher success in rehabilitation with them because they have to do the work. If they want a shot at ever seeing freedom, they have to do the work. The parole board looks at them and scrutinizes every part of them, looks at their C file, they dig in. This is what they're trained to do. And so they need to know that when this person moves out and becomes your neighbor, he's not going to commit another crime.
Sure.
So these guys have to do the work. They're in self-help. They really do start digging in, healing. When you got guys with determinate sentences, they're getting out.
Never thought about that.
They're getting out. And I use my son as a perfect example. I have my husband that was a lifer. My son did 5 years. My son didn't go to self-help groups.
I remember writing him, tell him, hey, do something in there.
Yeah. I mean, he was in a level 4 and was on lockdown probably 90% of his whole sentence. But when you want change, you'll go get it. You know, and so I think that is the difference. When you see real rehabilitation, it often happens with people doing long terms. And you do see a high rate of coming back with guys that, hey, you get a 5-year, okay, 5 years, I'll be back. You'll see that high turnover. Lifers, their return rate to prison, right now, it's gone up a little bit. It's 0.7%. But that's because they've done a lot of the work. And I do think that CDCR and the state does have to rethink of how do we rehabilitate these guys that don't have to do the work.
Right.
You incentivize them so much, you cut their time. Well, they're just going to check the box and go. If you don't deal with the underlying issues of their anger, because that's the major component, they're angry men, you know, they're going to go back out there and be violent again. So you got to address that somehow.
Yeah.
And where I think it starts is let's deal with our boys before they become these men.
Right.
You know, we got to start there and then deal with this here and close in on it at some point. And same thing with the women. You know, you have a large population of life for women. You know, so I do think that we have to find that medium.
Yeah.
And I think because they're so polar opposites, people don't want to do this.
And I'll be honest,
Yeah.
I was that guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And my stance on it has it's easier coming from this perspective too, right? I had one uncle that was murdered. The guy did 15 years. Is that tough for me to accept sometimes? Like, man, this guy only did 15 years. He murdered my uncle at the height of his life, like when he was doing great, like when things were just he was ready to live.
Happen. Yeah.
You know, and so it's hard for me to do that. But then I like I said, I look at things like your husband. I think he paid his debt to society, to be honest. I think.
Well, you never can give back life.
Right.
There's never atonement for that.
No.
So you can be rotten in jail. It's never going to bring that person back. You know, and to me, that's a big factor in it. With my grandson's dad that got murdered, I've always talked to my grandson about forgiveness. He actually wrote a letter to the guy that killed his dad. And I got to read it to the guy at his sentencing. And I wanted my grandson to be free of that hate. And the guy was like blown away. Because I know both sides, so I can be empathetic to it. I know, dude, you're just starting your term. You know, but you got this little kid that forgives you. Talking about, like, you probably did it because you're in a gang and this and that. This little 10-year-old boy talking to you like this.
Wow.
You know, and so I have lived both sides. So I'm not privileged, but I can see things from both perspectives. And I'm looking at my husband, and yes, there was 3 lives that were gone that will never come back, that he will have to live with that for the rest of his life. But does that mean that he needs to die in prison? Is there a point that he can rehabilitate enough to come out back into society and become a productive citizen? You know, do we have not faith in humankind?
Yeah.
You know, like, where does that line? And I know, I get it. There's people out there that probably be like, no, they took my kid. He took my kid, and I don't want him free. I get the anger, and I don't bash anybody for it. But for me, personally, I had to learn to forgive. Somebody almost took my daughter's life. Recently. And I can honestly tell you that not one moment of hate came into my heart. I'm like, you know, this individual that did this, I just pray that she can find herself, because it's a journey. And, you know, my daughter was in the game, is in the game. This is what this life brings. Who are we kidding here?
Yeah.
You know, let's not sugarcoat it. You know, we want to sit here and play dumb about it and deaf and blind. You know, this is what happens. You either end up in prison or in an institution. That's it. There's two paths. And I've got to experience all of them in my life. Death, my husband had life, my son had prison, my daughter almost got killed. And so it's been a big turmoil in my life. And I look at it this way. God gave me a unique perspective.
Yeah, I mean, from all sides.
All sides.
You know, that's I think in dealing with talking to you and talking to Trino, it's given me a new perspective we can't generalize every single guy that's in there.
Yeah.
You know,
when it becomes personal, it's different. When it affects you personally, then but this is the exception.
Yeah.
You know, and then when somebody gets killed that's close to you, no, I want them in prison, but then I want my brother free.
Yeah, yeah. Even for me personally, the extra added thing, is God telling me, hey, is that sin not good enough to forgive?
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, Lord, like I can forgive this guy over here that treated me bad at work. Like it's cool, but don't try to bring it over here to this. I mean, it's kind of
conditional, right?
Yeah, it's a tricky thing that really, I'm not saying plays games in your mind, but really causes you to really confront a lot of feelings and a lot of things. Because I've been a lot thinking about that. Even with my brother, my brother-in-law, when he came, and he's a public defender that grew up in Boyle Heights, and I said, he was really like, no, man, and I'm like almost like want to argue with him. I'm like, no, this is the way they did it. That's it. And he was really cool about it. He's like, it's different for every guy. And I was kind of like, and then I your husband, just hearing the story and everything. And I was just like, hey, I mean, he looks happy. I mean, it just like I began to think about it. And then with Trino and his forgiveness for his brother's murder. And I was kind of like, this is like, okay, Lord, like, what are you telling me here? Like, I'm this guy, like, conservative, like, and that doesn't mean like I'm Republican and just jam everybody down. It doesn't make sense because I grew up in the neighborhood. So I know I don't think that but the rehabilitation part for me has really come to light even more. Trino made the point of, it used to be California Department of Corrections, and then it got changed to California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. Yep. So I began to think about that. Like, what else do we like? What's a better way to do? Hey, you have a sentence. We need to try to rehab you.
Yep.
And I think I truly think that's the answer, because we know people that just 5 years here, 3 years here, 6 years here, and with the 3 strikes thing, it's pretty wild.
Yeah. And think about it too, just from a financial perspective, what's it costing California to house these inmates for that long?
Yeah.
That's another factor to think about when you go down that road. But there's a lot to consider in this, and I think when you really start looking at it from a deeper level, you get a better understanding. I think CDCR has a lot of work to do. They're nowhere where they need to be. But I think California is moving the right way. Do I think it's too extreme in some situations? Yes. But the reform needed to be done. There needs to be a reform. I don't think everybody deserves to be in there for life. I just don't. I think they have an opportunity if they can correct themselves and rehabilitate. And
is there
really
anybody
change.
you think that can't be rehabilitated?
I'm sure. Okay. I'm sure there's people that don't have the capacity to. They don't want to. They don't care.
They don't want to.
Yeah, they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't have nothing to live out here for.
Right.
My husband got released a year of parole, but it was basically like, here's your gate money, goodbye. You figure it out. Which
is another wild thing, right?
Yeah.
It leaves them with nothing.
I mean,
I tell people all the time, somebody gets out of jail, go look for a construction job.
Yep.
Nobody judges you. If you're a hard worker, you get rewarded right off the bat.
Yep.
Like, I know it sounds, like, oh, that's it. That's all I can do. No, I'm telling you, this is a great job.
Yeah.
And nobody judges you because everybody has to pass construction. But if you're a good worker,
Yeah.
they love you and you're a part of the team, and that's it. That's all
and
they
I think
care
people
about.
like my husband, they have something to prove. So they're going to put, my husband's at work 2 hours early every day. And I'm like, why are you there so early? He's like, I'd rather be 2 hours early than 2 minutes late. That's my integrity.
It's that discipline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, he came out. Luckily, he did have me there. He had a home to come home to. He didn't have to go to a halfway house or a transitional home, or he had me to come home to. I'm financially stable. So he had the support of his family. His family's been amazing. Like all of them, his brothers, his sisters, his mom.
So he had an ideal situation.
He had an ideal situation.
Yeah, which is huge.
It's huge. I'm telling you, you don't know what the rough life's like. You got it made, but
you got me.
You got me. I'll figure it out.
Right?
Yeah.
I appreciate your story.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm really proud of you. We've been friends for a long time, and I'm really happy for you. Like, I'm happy your son's home,
Yeah.
your husband's home, your daughter survived.
Yeah, I'm a lot to be grateful for this year.
You look great.
Thank you.
I think you've come a long way. I mean, and you fought through, and I mean, I'm sure there's still difficulties. There's always difficulties in life, but I'm happy for you. I mean, it's great.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for coming on and telling your story. I would like to invite you back, and we can get to the ins and outs of a lot of the legal stuff there.
Yeah.
I know we don't agree on anything, but I know that you've always been a friend that's been open, to hearing my side,
For sure.
and me hearing your side. Like, okay, I learned something. Yeah.
There's some things I'm more passionate about than others. This is one of them, but that doesn't mean we can never be friends.
Yeah.
I disagree with people taking these polar positions, and
right.
You forget the friendship part. Like, that should be unconditional. And to me, I mean, at least our friendship has been. My girl Melissa, like, there's things that we probably won't talk about just because we're so on polar opposite sides of things. And believe it or not, there's a lot of things that I'm not as liberal as you might think. I would say I'm a very liberal Republican.
Oh man. You know what though? The funny thing is this. Look, the world has got very polarizing on that, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, I think most good people, and it sounds generalizing, but I think most good people are just left or right of center, right? We probably agree on a lot more than we do, and I tell people this all the time. There's, I'll tell you what. Like, I tell people, this is what I believe in. All I want to do is be left alone. I don't want the government to bother me. I want to be able to make a living for my family. I don't want nobody to bother me. I don't want my taxes to be super high. I want to be able to live in a safe neighborhood. I want to feel safe, whether that's with my guns or with my alarm, whatever. I want to feel safe, be able to protect my family, and be able to become whatever I want to become without being bothered. And most people will go, yeah, me too. Yeah. And worship my God.
Yeah.
Right? And I go, and I tell people this all the time. I say, isn't that what you believe? And isn't that what you want? And they usually go, yeah. And I was like, so you're a little bit more,
yeah, for sure,
more on my side. We're more like-minded than you say. Now, is there some other things that might be, yeah, but for the most part, we're closer than we think. And this polarizing of far left or far right is it's
breaking our country.
It is breaking our country because
it has broken it.
There's some things that we can say that's just flat out wrong.
Yeah.
Like come on. That doesn't make no sense. That's wrong.
Yep.
We can't agree on that. You have to admit that.
Well, you know what? When you have the people on the stage acting fools,
call it for what it is.
Then how do you expect the rest of the country to follow suit?
Yeah.
You have a bunch of circus going on.
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But I think, for the most part, everybody that I've talked to one-on-one, we're a lot more closer than we think. And I think, media, politicians, loudmouths, social media has kind of like, let's bring this divide. And, there is conservatives that believe people shouldn't do life. And there is liberals that believe, hey, you do the crime, you better pay all the time. I mean, you know, there's things that we cross over on. You know, I tell people I believe in freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and they're like, "Oh, you just say that for your religion?" No, I say that for all religions because I'm in there. Mm-hmm. So whether you want to worship Allah or you know Virgin Mary, whoever, you know, it's for all of us. Like we used to think like that, and now everybody's just so polarized.
Well, because it used to be healthy debate.
Yeah.
Now it's, if you believe this, I cut you off.
I've lost a lot of friends.
And that's ridiculous to me. That boggles my mind because then your friendship was conditional. Mm-hmm. Like, we should be able to agree to disagree, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, how dumb of us to want to be everybody the same. Like, that's dumb.
I've had friends that I've lost that have come against me because we don't agree. And I said, hey, man, like, let's just agree to disagree on that. And let's not talk about that. Let's talk about what we have in common. Yep. You know, our kids, you know, sports, whatever it may, art, whatever it may be. Like, let's talk about that. But let's just, and, you know, my kids have come home and just been like, man, they're not my friend no more because I don't believe that. And I'm like, gee, like, we're there. And I think that's,
it's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. You lose I've lost good friends or good relationships with people over those things, and I'm like, well, I guess my circle gets a little bit smaller now.
It's better smaller.
Yeah. Real quick before we go, I know, man, that was like 2 hours right here. Cam's like over there dying.
He's on his phone, huh?
No, he's paying attention. He's paying attention. We got one more thing. Me and Cam like to call this the Street Gospel Furious 5. And what I do is I ask you 5 furious questions and you just answer them.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
This is kind of, I'm saying this tongue in cheek. Question number 1. You're on death row. Last meal. Anything. What are you having?
Ooh. My mom's homemade quesadillas.
Really?
Oh, yeah. That's my favorite.
What makes... Okay. Quesadillas? Last meal?
But she makes them with chicharrón. She makes them with cheese. She makes them with potato.
Okay, that's not a quesadilla.
That's authentic Mexican, real stuff. With masa.
The whole thing.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Last meal, mom's quesadillas.
Yep.
I'm going to have to try Martha's quesadillas one of these days. You're going to have to bring me one.
Yep.
Question number 2. Biggest regret in your life?
Probably not being the mom I should have been earlier. Yeah.
All right. Question number 3. Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
A homeowner with my husband. Probably in law school.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, you still have goals?
Oh, yeah.
Still pushing?
Oh, yeah.
And what kind of law are you practicing, just to ask?
Right now, I'm in work comp, but I definitely want to go into criminal.
All right.
Yeah.
Nice. And you're going to be that public defender that gets these guys out.
Yep.
That you feel that and be the advocate for them.
Yep.
Right on. Question number 4. If you can have any car from the old neighborhood to cruise around in, what would it be?
Ooh. What's Carlos's car? It's a
Monte Carlo?
Yep.
You would have the Monte Carlo?
Yep, I'd have the Monte Carlo. Or Alco. I like El Caminos, but I like Carlos's.
Ooh, the El Caminos for me.
Yeah.
I used to have one. Last question. Question number 5. Favorite sports team? I think I know this.
That's a crazy question. I'm a Raider fan for life and a Dodger fan.
All right, everybody out there, you heard it. That's why we're friends. I think Melissa has a picture, and you guys are all rated out.
Yep, all the time.
I never met a Raider fan I didn't like. Wait, though, but let me ask you a question. Is your husband a Raider fan?
Nope, he is not a Raider fan. I know. That's his biggest defect.
See that? I was going to invite you guys over for dinner, but you know what? I just... What was his team?
It's hard to come out of my mouth.
Don't tell me.
He's a Jacksonville Jaguar fan.
A Jacksonville Jaguar?
Yes. Yes.
All right.
It's a culture thing. The Jaguar, the Aztec thing.
Okay.
Go figure.
All right. Well, you know what? Okay. I can live with that. If you would have told me Chargers, Rams, or 49ers, I would have been like, Gabby, this guy's not for you. I'll let you get away with the Jaguars.
A little not understandable, but okay.
Maybe the Packers, Steelers, but yeah. We'll let him get away with that one. Yeah. But if you would have said he's a Cowboys fan, 49, I would have been like, you know what, Gabby, let me tell you something. This guy is not for you.
Drop him.
After all you guys been through, we're gonna base it on a team now.
Yep.
Hey Gabby, I appreciate you coming through.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Chapter 7.
Anything you want to shout out? I know you work with an organization, right?
A couple.
Shout them out.
My 10 Toe Sister, 10 Toe support group that deals with women with lifers and women that are dealing with men coming home. They also do a mentor support group for men coming home.
Nice.
California Parole Suitability Hearing Group. My girl Kat, she was my diehard throughout these years. ARC that my husband's part of, and Healing Dialogue. So a couple of organizations that have carried us through.
Nice.
Yep.
All right. Appreciate
Thank
that.
you.
That'll conclude this episode of the Street Gospel Podcast with Gabby Ruiz. Definitely an eye-opener, a blessing. Her story was great. Make sure you share this podcast with all your friends, family, co-workers, whoever's out there, man. We're on every podcast platform and on YouTube at Street Gospel TV. We out.